Hello, and welcome back to Today English Podcast. My name is Emmy, and I'm here to guide you on your journey to clear, confident, and natural English. If you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a lesson. Your support truly helps this channel grow. All right, take a deep breath, relax, and let's begin today's session. When Leo woke up that morning, he felt something different in the air. The sky outside his window was still a pale blue, holding the last colors of the night. The world felt quiet, almost like it was waiting, like it knew something important was going to happen. Leo stretched, yawned, and whispered, "Today, I start fresh." He was 26 years old, and for the first time in many years, he felt excited. He had been searching for a job for months, trying to begin a new chapter, hoping to leave behind a long period of confusion and disappointment. 2 months earlier, he had lost his job at a small company. At first, he told everyone he was fine. He said it was temporary. He said he would find something better. But deep inside, he felt ashamed. He felt worried. He felt unsure of what he could really do. For weeks, he woke up with a heavy chest, wondering if he had made the wrong choices in life. But on this morning, he had hope. He had an interview. A real one. A good one. He spent the last week preparing answers, reading about the company, practicing how to speak clearly, slowly, confidently. He wanted to show that he was capable, smart, and ready. As he put on his shirt and fixed his collar, he looked into the small mirror on his wall. "You can do this," he whispered. His voice sounded quiet, but determined. Outside, the sun started to rise. Birds made soft sounds. The world felt gentle. And Leo felt ready. He stepped out of his apartment, locked the door, and breathed in the cold morning air. He walked down the street with long steps, holding his small bag close to his side. The bus stop was only 10 minutes away, but every step felt meaningful. He looked at the faces of people passing by and thought, "They don't know how important today is for me." When he arrived at the bus stop, he stood under the tall tree that grew beside the road. Its leaves shook softly in the wind. Leo checked the time. He was early. Good. He liked being early. It helped him feel calm. But then, after a few minutes, he saw something strange. People around him began checking their phones. Some whispered. Some frowned. A woman nearby shook her head and sighed. Leo opened his phone quickly, searching for the bus schedule, and there it was, all buses delayed due to road accident. 12 minutes. 20 minutes. 30 minutes. He felt his heart drop a little, but he tried to stay calm. "It's fine," he told himself. "I left early. I'll still make it." But the minutes passed. The sky grew brighter and the morning became busier. Cars moved slowly on the road. People looked impatient. And Leo's confidence started to fade. He checked the time again and again. The bus finally arrived almost 40 minutes late. Leo stepped in, sat near the window, and held his bag tightly. The bus moved slowly, stopping often. Every minute made him more anxious. He stared outside, watching the buildings pass by, feeling the pressure growing inside him. He imagined arriving late. He imagined walking into the interview room with everyone looking at him. He imagined the disappointment on their faces. These thoughts made his chest heavy. When the bus finally reached the city center, Leo ran out and rushed through the streets, almost bumping into people. He reached the building 15 minutes late. His hair was messy, his breathing fast, his shirt wet with sweat. He tried to fix himself before entering the office, but he felt nervous, embarrassed, and upset. A receptionist with a kind smile greeted him. "You must be Leo," she said. He nodded, trying to catch his breath. "I'm so sorry," he said. "The bus, it's okay," she answered softly, but Leo could feel her sympathy, and that made him even more anxious. She led him to a waiting room. Leo sat alone, staring at the floor, feeling his confidence fall apart. A man in a dark suit eventually called his name. Leo followed him into a bright room with large windows. 3 interviewers sat at a long table. They smiled politely. Leo sat down, trying to calm his shaking hands. The questions began. First slowly, then faster, flowing into one another. Questions about his experience, his skills, his goals. his past job. Normally, Leo knew the answers. He had practiced them. But today, his mind felt full of noise. The sound of the bus, the rush through the streets, the pressure, the fear. He struggled. He paused too long. He answered too quickly. He mixed ideas. He felt himself disconnecting from his own voice. At one moment, he completely froze. His mind went blank, white, empty, silent. He felt panic rise in his chest. One of the interviewers asked gently, "Are you okay?" Leo nodded, but he wasn't. The next 20 minutes passed like a blur. When the interview ended, the interviewers thanked him. They were polite, but Leo could see the truth in their eyes. This had not gone well. He walked out of the building slowly, like someone walking through water. Everything around him felt distant. The sky looked gray now. The excitement he had in the morning had disappeared. He felt small. He felt weak. He felt like he had failed. He took the long way home, walking through streets he didn't know. His steps were quiet, almost soft. At one point, he sat on a small bench near a bakery. The warm smell of bread filled the air, but it didn't comfort him. He held his head in his hands and whispered, "Why did this happen? Why can't I do anything right?" A man sitting nearby looked at him for a moment, but said nothing. Leo didn't want anyone to see him. He felt embarrassed, frustrated, tired. When he finally returned home, he dropped his bag on the floor and lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling. He replayed every moment in his mind. The bus, the rush, the interview, the blink moment, the silence. He felt the weight of disappointment pressing down on him. Hours passed. The light in his room changed from bright to soft to dark. And Leo stayed there, thinking, sinking deeper into his sadness. At around 9 in the evening, his phone vibrated. He looked at it. An email. From the company. His heart raced. He knew what it was before opening it. But he opened it anyway. "Thank you for your time." Unfortunately, he stopped reading. The words hurt. They felt heavy. They felt final. He turned off his phone and placed it face down. He lay still, staring at the ceiling again. And that's when a quiet thought appeared inside him, like a small whisper. Maybe this is the end. Maybe I wasn't meant to succeed. It was a dark thought. A hopeless one. A thought many people feel after failure. But sometimes, the most important stories begin exactly at the moment when we feel lost, not when we feel strong. And this was that moment for Leo. But of course, he didn't know that yet. He only knew the pain of falling. And that is where our journey begins, with failure, with disappointment, with a heart that feels broken, but still beats quietly, waiting for something to change. Leo closed his eyes and breathed out slowly. He felt empty. But in that emptiness, something small began to grow, something he didn't notice yet. A question. A possibility. A tiny spark of curiosity. What if this failure means something? He didn't have the answer yet, but he was about to find it. This is the end of Section 1 of Today English podcast. When you're ready, join me in Section 2, where Leo begins to see failure in a new light. And this is where the slow magic begins. Leo woke up the next morning feeling heavy, as if someone had placed a stone on his chest during the night. His room was dim, the curtains still drawn, and for a few long minutes he didn't move. He didn't want to. His body felt tired, and his mind felt thick with thoughts he didn't want to think. The memory of the interview returned like a wave, slow, then strong. He closed his eyes, wishing he could erase it, wishing he could go back and do everything differently. But he couldn't. Failure had already happened. And now he had to face it. After lying there for almost an hour, he finally sat up. His hair was messy, and his face looked pale in the small mirror across the room. He rubbed his eyes and whispered, "What do I do now?" The room didn't answer. The world didn't answer. But silence, sometimes, gives us space to hear things we usually ignore. Leo stood up slowly, walked to the kitchen, and poured himself a glass of water. His hands were still slightly shaking. He drank quietly, staring at the blank wall in front of him. He felt small, almost invisible. He knew he needed to clear his head, so he put on a sweatshirt and stepped outside. The morning air was cold. The kind of cold that wakes you even when you feel lost. Leo began walking without direction. He went down familiar streets, past the same shops, the same corners, the same houses. But the world looked different today, not because the world had changed, but because he had. His failure made everything feel heavier. He felt like people could see his disappointment, like it was written on his face. But of course, no one knew. People walked by him, focused on their own lives, their own problems, their own worries. He walked for an hour, then 2. Eventually, he reached a small park he hadn't visited in years. It wasn't big, just a simple green space with a few trees, some benches, and a small pond where ducks swam slowly. Leo sat down on one of the old wooden benches. He breathed deeply, letting the cold air fill his lungs. As he watched the water move gently, he thought about everything that had gone wrong. The bus, the panic, the blink moment, the rejection. It all felt so unfair. Why me, he thought. Why can't things work just once? He leaned back and closed his eyes. The sounds of the park surrounded him, the soft wind, the birds, a distant dog barking. And then, suddenly, someone sat down next to him. Leo opened his eyes and saw an older man wearing a light brown coat and a warm scarf. He had white hair, a calm face, and kind eyes. The man smiled gently and said, "Cold morning, isn't it?" Leo nodded. "Yeah, very cold." The man laughed softly. "Cold days make people think too much." Leo looked at him, surprised by the comment. "Maybe," he said. The man glanced at Leo's face, studying him for a moment, not in a rude way, but in a quiet, understanding way. "You look like someone who is carrying something heavy," the man said. Leo hesitated. He didn't know who this man was. He didn't know why he cared. But something about the old man felt safe. So Leo sighed and said softly, "I had a bad day yesterday." The old man nodded slowly, as if he already knew. "A very bad day," Leo added. The man looked at the pond, his eyes following the ducks. "We all have them," he said. "Some days lift us, and some days push us down." Leo looked away, feeling his throat tighten. "I failed an interview," he said. "A very important one." The old man's expression stayed calm. "I see." Leo continued. "I was late. I froze. I made mistakes. And last night they sent me an email, saying I didn't get the job." He laughed, but the laugh had no happiness in it. "It feels like everything is falling apart." For a moment, the old man said nothing. He simply watched the pond, his hands resting gently on his knees. Then, with a slow, thoughtful voice, he said, "You know, failure is a strange teacher." Leo looked at him. "Teacher?" "Yes," the man said. "But one we do not ask for, one we do not like, one we often run away from. And yet, it is the one that teaches us the things success never can." Leo didn't respond. He wanted to understand, but he didn't. "Not yet." The man continued, "When we succeed, we feel good. We feel strong. We feel safe. But we learn very little. Success gives comfort, not growth. Failure," he paused, breathing deeply. "Failure gives pain, but it also gives clarity." Leo frowned. "Clarity?" "Yes," the old man said. "Clarity about who we are. Clarity about what we want. Clarity about what is missing, what must change, what must grow." He turned to Leo and added softly, "Pain makes us look more deeply than comfort ever will." Leo didn't know what to say. The words felt heavy, but also true. The old man smiled gently. "Let me tell you something," he said. "When I was young, I wanted to be a painter. I was sure that art was my future. I had passion, I had ideas, I had dreams. But when I showed my work to galleries, they all said no. Every single one. They didn't like my style. They didn't like my colors. They didn't like me." Leo listened closely. The old man continued, "The rejections hurt so much that I stopped painting. I thought I had failed. I thought I wasn't good enough. For years, I carried that pain with me. But then, one day, I realized something important. I didn't love painting because I wanted success. I loved it because it made me feel alive. And failure made me forget that." He paused, breathing slowly. "So, after many years, I picked up a brush again. Not for the world. Not for galleries. For myself." Leo looked at the man's hands. They were gentle, steady, the hands of someone who had lived a long life. "Did you become a successful painter?" Leo asked. The man laughed softly. "Not in the way I once dreamed. I never became famous. I never sold millions. But I became something better." He looked at Leo with warm eyes. "I became myself again." Silence stretched between them, but it was a comfortable silence. A silence that felt like understanding. The old man then said, "Maybe your failure is not the end. Maybe it is showing you something. Something you couldn't see before." Leo looked at the pond, thinking about his words. "But it hurts," Leo whispered. "Of course it does," the man said. "Growth always begins with discomfort. A seed breaks before it grows. A muscle hurts before it becomes strong. A heart cracks before it learns." He looked up at the sky. "Pain is not a sign that you are weak. Pain is a sign that something new is growing." Leo felt his chest tighten again, but this time it wasn't sadness. It was something else. Something warmer. The old man stood up slowly. "I should go," he said. "But before I leave, let me tell you one last thing." Leo looked up. "Your failure did not break you. It woke you." Leo opened his mouth, but no words came out. The man smiled gently, gave a small wave, and walked away slowly, leaving Leo alone on the bench. Leo watched him disappear down the path, feeling something shift inside him. It wasn't a full transformation. Not yet. It was only a spark. A small light in a dark room. But it was real. He stayed on the bench for a while longer, thinking about everything the old man had said. Failure gives clarity. Pain is a teacher. Something is growing. He wasn't sure he believed it fully, but he felt calmer. The weight on his chest felt a little lighter. Eventually, he stood up and began walking home. The world looked a little less heavy now. The colors seemed slightly brighter. The air felt different. When he arrived home, he made himself tea and sat at his small desk. He opened a notebook, one he hadn't touched in months, and wrote at the top of a blank page, "What can I learn from this?" He stared at the question. It felt strange. It felt difficult. But it also felt important. Slowly, he began to write. He wrote about his fear of failure. He wrote about the pressure he felt. He wrote about how unprepared he was for unexpected problems like the bus delay. He wrote about freezing under stress. He wrote honestly. He wrote openly. He wrote things he had never told anyone. And as he wrote, something soft and powerful happened. His failure stopped feeling like the end of everything. It started feeling like the beginning of something. He didn't know what yet, but something. After writing for an hour, he stopped and read his words again. They looked different on paper. They looked clearer, less frightening. Like shadows losing their darkness under light. Leo leaned back in his chair and breathed slowly. He felt more grounded, more present. He wasn't okay yet, not completely. But he was no longer drowning. He was floating. And that was enough for today. That night, before sleeping, he whispered, "Maybe this can change me. And without knowing it, he had just taken the first real step toward growth. Not by succeeding, but by failing. Not by being strong, but by being honest. And this is the quiet lesson. Failure is not the wall at the end of the road. Failure is the doorway to a new one. Thank you for listening to Section 2 of Today English Podcast. When you are ready, join me in Section 3, where Leo begins the difficult but beautiful process of rebuilding himself. The morning after his writing session, Leo woke up feeling different. Not better. Not healed. Just clearer. His room felt the same, silent and a little messy, but his heart felt less heavy. He sat up slowly and looked at the notebook on his desk. The page he wrote last night was still open. The sentence at the top, "What can I learn from this?" looked back at him like a gentle reminder. He rubbed his eyes, stretched his arms, and whispered, "Okay, let's try again." Not, "Let's succeed." Not, "Let's fix everything." Just, "Let's try." And sometimes, that is the bravest thing a person can say. He made himself breakfast, something simple, toast and tea, and ate quietly. As he chewed slowly, he thought about the interview, the old man's words, and the list he wrote last night. He realized something important. Failure taught him exactly where he was weak. It showed him the places he avoided. It showed him the things he needed to work on. And for the first time, he didn't feel ashamed of those weaknesses. He just felt aware. And awareness is the beginning of growth. After breakfast, he opened his laptop and searched for jobs again. But this time, he didn't feel the panic he usually felt. Instead, he felt curious. What kind of job would actually fit him? What kind of work made him feel excited, not pressured? What skills did he need to improve? He clicked through listings, reading slowly, carefully. And as he read, he noticed something. Many of the jobs he wanted required strong communication skills, clear speaking, calm expression, confidence under pressure. And suddenly, the memory of freezing during the interview returned, but this time it didn't hurt in the same way. Now it felt like a sign, a message, something telling him, "This is what you must grow." He leaned back in his chair and whispered, "I need to practice speaking." He remembered the moment in the interview when his mind went blank. He remembered how fast he spoke because he was nervous. He remembered how his hands shook. And he thought, "I don't want to feel that again." He searched online for communication tips, watched a few short videos, read a few articles, and learned something interesting. Speaking is not just talking. Speaking is breathing. Speaking is slowing down. Speaking is being present. And speaking is something you can train. He grabbed his notebook and wrote a new list. Things to practice. 1. Slow breathing. 2. Speaking slowly. 3. Clear thoughts. 4. Staying calm when nervous. He looked at the list and nodded. It seemed simple, but he knew it would be difficult. Growth always is. That afternoon, he decided to go back to the park. The air was warmer than the day before, and sunlight touched the tops of the trees. People walked their dogs, children laughed near the swings, and the pond sparkled gently. Leo sat on the same bench and smiled softly. The old man wasn't there, but his presence was. His words stayed in Leo's mind like a warm echo. Leo took a deep breath and practiced speaking to himself quietly. Just simple phrases. My name is Leo. I want to grow. I can learn. At first, it felt silly, embarrassing, strange. But then he remembered the old man saying that growth begins with discomfort. So he kept going. I am strong enough to try again. I can change. I am learning from failure. His voice was soft, almost like a whisper, but the words felt powerful. After a few minutes, he stood up and walked slowly around the pond, continuing to speak softly. People passed him, but he didn't care. For once, he wasn't thinking about what others thought. He was thinking about who he wanted to become. He walked for an hour, practicing slow breathing and calm speech. And little by little, something inside him loosened. The fear did not disappear, but it became quieter. The next day, he practiced again. This time in his room. He sat in front of the mirror and spoke simple sentences. I am nervous, but that's okay. I am learning to trust myself. I am speaking slowly. He watched his face as he spoke. He noticed how his eyes moved, how his mouth tightened when he felt unsure, how his shoulders lifted when he worried. And he gently corrected himself. He lowered his shoulders. He softened his expression. He breathed more deeply. And as he watched himself, he realized something surprising. He didn't look weak. He didn't look broken. He looked human. And that made him smile. On the third day, he tried something harder. He turned on the voice recorder on his phone and told a short story to himself. A story about the interview. A story about failure. A story about what he learned. When he played it back, he laughed. He spoke too fast. His voice shook at some parts. His breathing was messy. But he didn't feel discouraged. He felt motivated. I can fix this, he said. I can get better. And so he recorded a second time. Then a third. By the 10th attempt, he spoke slower. His voice sounded steadier. His breathing sounded calmer. For the first time in many days, he felt proud. Not because he succeeded, but because he was trying. Days continued like this, slow, simple, full of practice. Some days were good. Some days were difficult. Some days he felt strong. Some days he felt lost again. But he kept going. And that consistency began to change him. On the 7th day, something unexpected happened. Leo received an email from a friend he hadn't spoken to in months. Her name was Sarah. They used to work together at the old company. She wrote, Hey Leo, I heard you were looking for jobs. My new company is hiring. If you want, I can recommend you. Leo stared at the email for a long time. His heart raced. A recommendation could be a big opportunity. But the fear returned. What if he failed again? What if he froze again? What if he embarrassed himself again? He stood up and walked around the room nervously. The fear felt real. Heavy. But then he remembered the old man saying, pain is a sign that something new is growing. And he remembered writing in his notebook. And he remembered all the practice he had done this past week. He sat back down, took a deep breath and replied, Yes. I would really appreciate that. After sending the email, his hands shook a little. But he smiled. This is progress, he whispered. 2 days later, Sarah sent him another message. They want to interview you next Tuesday. Leo froze. His heart jumped. His legs felt weak. The interview was 1 week away. 7 days. 7 days to fight fear. 7 days to prepare. 7 days to become stronger. He closed his eyes and breathed slowly. I can do this, he whispered, even though part of him didn't believe it yet. The next morning, Leo woke up earlier than usual. He stood in front of the mirror and practiced speaking. Not fast. Not loud. Just clear. Just calm. My name is Leo. Thank you for meeting with me. I'm excited to share my experience. He practiced answers to common interview questions. Not memorizing. Understanding. Feeling. Speaking from the heart. He recorded himself again each day. He listened to every recording. He noticed his mistakes and corrected them gently, patiently. He practiced breathing exercises he learned online, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. He practiced standing straight, holding a soft, confident expression. And something beautiful started happening. He began enjoying the practice. He began enjoying the sound of his own voice. He began enjoying the feeling of progress. One night, 3 days before the interview, Leo sat at his desk, looking at everything he had practiced. His notes were filled with thoughts, lessons, and questions. His recordings showed slow improvement. His confidence had grown, not fully, but enough to feel real. He closed his notebook and whispered, "I'm ready to try. Not to win. Just to try." That same night, as he lay in bed, he remembered something the old man said. "Your failure did not break you. It woke you." And Leo realized the truth. The failed interview didn't destroy him. It pushed him to grow in ways he never would have grown on his own. Without the failure, he would still be afraid. Without the failure, he wouldn't have learned to breathe, to speak, to calm himself, to reflect, to grow. In this moment, lying in the quiet darkness, he felt something warm fill his chest, hope. Real, quiet hope. The morning of the interview arrived slowly. Leo woke early, stretched, and breathed deeply. He put on a clean shirt and looked at himself in the mirror. His eyes still had some fear, but they also had determination. He walked to the bus stop, but this time he left very early. He arrived early. He sat in the waiting area early. And as he sat there, he whispered to himself, "You do not have to be perfect. You only have to be present." When his name was called, he stood up slowly, breathing calmly, feeling his feet on the ground. He walked into the interview room with a soft smile and a steady heart. And this simple moment of entering the room was already a victory compared to last time. The interviewers greeted him warmly. He sat down, breathing slowly. And when the first question came, he didn't panic. He didn't freeze. He didn't rush. He paused. He breathed. And then he spoke. Not perfectly. Not magically. But honestly. Calmly. Clearly. He was speaking as the new version of himself that he had built through failure, reflection, and practice. And as he talked, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: confidence. Not loud confidence. Quiet confidence. The kind that grows from the inside. The kind that stays. When the interview ended, the interviewer shook his hand and smiled. Leo walked out of the building with a soft smile, not because he knew he got the job, but because he knew he had changed. Because he knew he had grown. Because he knew he had faced failure and walked through it. When he reached the park on his way home, he sat on the same bench and whispered, "I did it." And for the first time in many weeks, he felt proud of himself. Not for succeeding, but for becoming stronger. Thank you for listening to Section 3 of Today English Podcast. When you're ready, join me in Section 4, where Leo discovers that growth brings new opportunities and new challenges he never expected. The day after the new interview, Leo woke up before his alarm. Sunlight entered his room softly, painting the walls with warm yellow light. He felt something unusual inside him. Not fear, not stress, not sadness. He felt calm. He lay there for a moment, breathing slowly, remembering the day before. He remembered the interview room, the chairs, the bright lights, the faces of the interviewers. But most of all, he remembered his own voice. Clear, steady, present. He hadn't been perfect. He had paused too long at times. He had searched for words at moments. But he hadn't frozen, and he hadn't rushed. He had been himself. And that felt like a victory. He made breakfast, sat by the window, and watched people walking on the street below. The world suddenly felt a little bigger, like it had more space, more possibilities. He didn't know if he would get the job, but he felt something more important. He felt proud. After breakfast, he opened his notebook and wrote a new sentence. "I tried, and that is enough." He underlined it slowly. He didn't want to forget this feeling. As the day continued, he cleaned his room, washed his dishes, and organized his small desk. He played soft music and let himself relax. For the first time in many weeks, he didn't feel trapped in his own thoughts. He felt light, free. In the afternoon, He decided to go for a walk. The sky was clear, and the wind carried the smell of fresh flowers. He walked to the park again, the same place where he met the old man. The same bench. The same pond. He sat down and watched the ducks swim quietly. He wondered if the old man would appear again, but the bench next to him stayed empty. Still, Leo felt his presence. It was strange how a short conversation with a stranger could change so much. He whispered softly, "Thank you," even though no one could hear him. After a while, he stood up and walked around the pond. He noticed small things he had never noticed before: the reflection of the sky in the water, the sound of leaves brushing in the wind, the quiet laughter of children in the distance. Life felt different when you slowed down. Life felt bigger when you paid attention. When he returned home, he checked his phone, expecting nothing. But there it was, an email notification. His heart jumped. His hands grew warm. He sat down on the edge of his bed, took a deep breath, and opened it. "Dear Leo, thank you for attending the interview. We enjoyed meeting you, and we would like to invite you for a second interview next week." Leo stared at the screen. Then he read the sentence again. And again. A second interview. They wanted him back. They wanted to talk to him again. He felt his eyes fill with tears, small, quiet tears, not from sadness, but from something stronger: relief, pride, hope. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply. "I did it," he whispered. "I'm doing it." This wasn't the end. But it was a step. A real step. For the rest of the day, he felt lighter than ever. He practiced speaking again. He recorded his voice again. He spent time preparing, not out of fear, but out of excitement. But as the days passed, something new and unexpected began to happen. People in his life started noticing the change in him. His friend Sarah called him one evening. "I heard you did really well," she said. "The manager liked your calm energy." Leo smiled shyly. "I was so nervous," he admitted. "But I tried." "That's the important part," Sarah said warmly. "You kept going." Her words stayed with him. Another day, Leo visited his mother. She looked at him closely and said, "You look different. Happier. More steady." Leo laughed softly. "Really?" "Yes," she said, touching his arm. "Something is changing inside you." He didn't know how to explain it to her. But he felt it too. Growth. Confidence. Strength. The kind of strength that does not shout, but stands quietly. The kind of strength that comes from falling and standing back up. The second interview day arrived quickly. Leo woke up early, practiced breathing, practiced speaking, and left the house with plenty of time. He reached the building 30 minutes early and sat in the lobby, calming himself with slow breaths. When they called his name, he smiled. He could still feel a little nervousness, but it no longer controlled him. It simply lived beside him, like a small passenger on his journey. The second interview was harder. More questions. More details. More challenges. They asked him about teamwork, about conflict, about problem solving. They asked him about his strengths and weaknesses. And for the first time in his life, Leo answered honestly without fear or trying to impress anyone. For weaknesses, he said, "Sometimes I get nervous in high-pressure moments. But I'm learning to slow down, breathe, and handle them better." The interviewer nodded with interest. "How did you learn that?" Leo paused, smiled softly, and said, "Failure taught me." He didn't go into details. He didn't mention the old man. He didn't talk about the painful first interview. But he spoke with a calm truth. And the interviewers listened. When the interview ended, Leo walked outside into the sunlight and felt something warm expand inside him. Not because he expected success, but because he respected himself. He had grown. He had changed. And he could feel it. That afternoon, he returned to the park and sat on the same bench. He breathed in the warm air and whispered, "I'm proud of me." For the next 2 days, Leo waited. He tried to stay calm. He took long walks. He made warm tea. He wrote in his notebook. He kept practicing speaking. And then, on a quiet Friday afternoon, his phone rang. It was Sarah. He answered quickly. "Hello, Leo," she exclaimed with excitement. "They chose you." Leo froze. "What? You got the job." He felt his body go still. His breath caught in his throat. His heart began to race. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. "Yes," she laughed. "The manager just told me. You're in." Leo covered his face with his hands. He felt warmth spread through his chest, through his arms, through his whole body. Tears filled his eyes. He leaned back in his chair and breathed out slowly, shakily, like someone letting go of months of fear. I did it," he whispered. Sarah laughed softly. "Yes, you did." After they hung up, Leo sat quietly for a long time. He didn't shout. He didn't dance. He didn't run around his room. He simply sat there, letting the truth sink in. He got the job. He succeeded. But the success didn't feel like the most important part. What felt important was the journey. The failure. The pain. The reflection. The slow practice. The old man's words. The growth. He whispered, "Thank you," not to anyone in particular, but to the world, to life, to every moment that shaped him. Then, something unexpected happened. Leo felt a thought rise inside him, a thought he had never felt before. Maybe failure helped me more than success ever could. And that thought stayed with him. For the next few days, Leo prepared for his new job. He bought a new notebook. He cleaned his apartment. He practiced speaking every morning. He walked with a new energy, a new purpose. But growth, as life always teaches, is not one straight line. On his first day at the new job, Leo woke up early and dressed carefully. He wanted to make a good impression. He arrived at the office 30 minutes early, smiling, excited. But when he entered the building, he felt the old fear return. The rooms were unfamiliar. The faces were new. People walked quickly, talking confidently. And suddenly, Leo felt small again. What if I'm not good enough? He thought. What if I make mistakes? What if they think they hired the wrong person? His hands started to shake. His breathing grew fast. The old anxiety returned like a shadow. For a moment, he felt like running away. But then he remembered the park. He remembered the old man. He remembered his notebook. He remembered practicing in front of the mirror. He remembered that fear does not mean he is weak. Fear means he is growing. He closed his eyes and took a slow, deep breath. Then another. Then one more. "You've faced worse," he whispered. "You can do this." When his new manager arrived, she smiled warmly and said, "Welcome, Leo. We're happy to have you." And, just like that, the fear softened. Not disappeared. Softened. Throughout the day, he learned new tasks. He met his teammates. He asked questions. He took notes. And yes, he made mistakes. Small ones. Simple ones. But each time he made a mistake, he didn't freeze. He didn't panic. He didn't break. He breathed. He corrected it. He learned. At lunch, he sat with 2 coworkers. They asked him where he was from, what he liked, how he felt about the job. Leo spoke slowly, calmly, honestly. For the first time, conversation felt natural. It felt warm. It felt easy. When the day finally ended, Leo walked home under the soft evening sky. His legs were tired, his shoulders heavy, but his heart felt full. As he crossed the small bridge near his apartment, he whispered, "I belong here." And that quiet sentence felt like one of the greatest victories of his life. That night, before sleeping, Leo wrote in his notebook, "Failure didn't stop me. It guided me." And with that sentence, he closed his eyes and drifted into a peaceful sleep, unaware that the next stage of his journey would bring new challenges. Challenges even deeper, even more emotional, challenges that would test the strength he had built. But for now, he slept with calm and gratitude, knowing he had grown more in these weeks than he had in years. Thank you for listening to Section 4 of Today English Podcast. When you're ready, join me in Section 5, where Leo learns that success brings new responsibilities and that growth continues long after the first victory. We have watched him fall, reflect, rise, and finally step into a new life. But growth does not stop when success arrives. In fact, sometimes success brings its own challenges, its own tests, and its own quiet battles. And that is what Section 5 is about, the moment when life gives us exactly what we asked for, but with new weight resting on our shoulders. Leo woke up on his second week at the new job feeling tired but proud. Each day so far had been full of learning. New tasks, new systems, new responsibilities. His mind felt full, almost overflowing, but for the first time in a long time, he felt that the work he was doing mattered. He felt needed. He felt connected to something. Still, as he brushed his teeth that morning, he noticed a small tension in his shoulders. Maybe it was stress, maybe it was excitement, maybe it was the quiet pressure of wanting to prove himself. He looked in the mirror and whispered, "Breathe." And he did. A slow, steady breath. Then another. And another. At the office, the day began quickly. His team was preparing for a big project, and everyone seemed focused, moving with purpose. His manager, Clara, called him over. "Leo, I want you to help us with the preparation today," she said kindly. Leo nodded, trying to hide the small wave of anxiety rising in his chest. "Of course," he said with a smile. But inside, he worried. What if I can't keep up? What if I make a mistake? The thoughts came fast, like small birds flapping their wings inside his mind. But he reminded himself of the old man's words. Pain is a sign that something new is growing, and fear is simply the body preparing for something meaningful. So he walked to his desk, opened his computer, and began working. The morning passed quickly. He helped organize documents, prepared files, and sent emails. But sometime around noon, something went wrong. He clicked the wrong button and accidentally deleted a file that the team needed. His stomach dropped. His hands froze. For a few seconds, he felt the same panic he felt during his first failed interview. His breath grew short. His heart raced. "Oh no, what did I just do?" he whispered. He looked around at his coworkers, afraid someone had noticed. And then suddenly, Clara walked over. "How's it going, Leo?" He swallowed. I think I messed something up," he said quietly. Clara leaned closer. "What happened?" He showed her the empty folder, his voice shaking slightly as he spoke. She frowned but didn't raise her voice. She didn't look angry. She simply said, "Okay. Mistakes happen. Let's fix it." Leo blinked, surprised. I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to, it's all right," Clara said calmly. "We can restore it from the backup." She clicked a few times, pressed a button, and the file reappeared. Just like that. Leo exhaled a long, heavy breath. "Thank you," he whispered. Clara smiled gently. "You're learning. Everyone makes mistakes in the beginning. Don't be afraid of them." Her words felt like warm sunlight on cold skin. They reminded Leo again that perfection was not the goal. Growth was. And growth always comes with mistakes. After Clara walked away, Leo sat back and let himself breathe deeply. It's okay, he told himself. It's okay to learn. It's okay to not know everything yet. The afternoon went smoother. He asked more questions. He double-checked his work. He didn't try to rush. He allowed himself to learn slowly. And by the end of the day, He felt steady again. But something interesting was happening inside him. He was starting to understand that growth didn't finish when he got the job. Growth was happening every day, every moment, every challenge. When he left the office, the sky was painted with soft orange and pink colors. The sun was setting and the world felt calm. He walked through the city with slow steps, thinking about everything he had learned so far. He thought about failure, about fear, about courage, about practice, about Clara's gentle reaction to his mistake. He whispered, "I'm still learning." And that's okay. The next morning, Leo woke up feeling more confident. He stretched, made breakfast, and smiled at his reflection in the mirror. One day at a time, he whispered. At work, something unexpected happened. Clara asked him to join a small brainstorming meeting with the team. "We want your ideas too," she said. His eyes widened. Him? They wanted his ideas? He felt honored, but also nervous. What if I say something wrong, he thought. What if my ideas sound stupid? But he remembered his breathing exercises. He remembered the old man. He remembered his notebook. So he took a slow, deep breath and walked into the room. The meeting began. People shared ideas quickly. Some were confident, some were loud, some were fast. Leo listened carefully, trying to understand. When it was his turn, he hesitated. His heartbeat quickened. His palms grew warm. Then he spoke. Slowly, calmly, clearly. He shared a simple suggestion about how to organize one part of the project more efficiently. When he finished, he looked down, unsure if he made sense. But then something surprising happened. Clara nodded. That's a good idea, Leo. Let's add that. He felt a warm wave of relief wash over him. His shoulders relaxed. He whispered in his mind, I did it. After the meeting, one of his coworkers, James, patted him on the back. Nice idea, he said. Leo smiled shyly. Thanks. I wasn't sure if it made sense. James laughed. It did. Keep speaking up. That small moment stayed with Leo. A tiny compliment. A tiny spark. But sometimes tiny sparks become big lights. Over the next few days, Leo continued learning. Some days he felt confident. Some days he felt nervous. Some days he made mistakes. Some days he did great work. But each day he kept trying. Each day he stayed present. Each day he remembered to breathe. One evening after work, he returned to the park, the same park that had become a symbol of his journey. He sat on the same bench and closed his eyes. The sounds of the park wrapped around him like a soft blanket. Children playing, leaves rustling, ducks splashing in the pond. He wondered again about the old man, where he was now, who he was, why he appeared exactly when Leo needed him. But even without answers, Leo felt grateful. Thank you, he whispered. You changed my life. Then, as he opened his eyes, he noticed something surprising, a small group of people near the pond listening to someone. A woman was giving a relaxing talk about mindfulness and breathing. Curious, Leo walked closer. The woman spoke softly. When we grow, we step into new spaces. And new spaces bring new pressure. But pressure is not the enemy. Pressure is the sign that life is stretching us. Leo felt those words in his heart. They felt familiar, like something he'd heard before. When you feel stress, she continued, it doesn't mean you are failing. It means you're expanding. Leo smiled. He felt like the universe was sending him small reminders in many forms. After listening for a few minutes, he sat on the grass and joined the group. He practiced slow breathing again. He let the air move in and out of his body smoothly, gently. And for a moment, everything felt still. Everything felt peaceful. As he walked home that night, he felt clarity rising inside him. Growth happens in cycles. Fall, learn, rise, struggle, grow, repeat. He wasn't done. He wasn't finished. He was only beginning. And that thought didn't scare him. It inspired him. The next week at work brought new challenges. A huge project was starting, and everybody on the team felt the pressure. Deadlines, meetings, complicated tasks, long hours. And in the middle of all this, Clara looked at Leo and said, "I'd like you to take responsibility for one part of the project." Leo felt his breath stop. "Me?" "Yes," she said with a warm smile. "You're ready for this." He wasn't sure. But Clara believed in him. And sometimes, when someone believes in us before we believe in ourselves, something powerful happens. He accepted the responsibility, even though his hands shook a little. And for the next few days, he worked hard. Very hard. He researched. He asked questions. He organized tasks. He made calls. He tested things. He stayed focused. But he also felt overwhelmed. There were moments when he doubted himself. Moments when he felt lost. Moments when he wanted to hide. One night, after a long day, he sat at his desk feeling exhausted. His head hurt. His body was tired. His mind was full. And then, without warning, a familiar thought returned. Maybe I can't do this. He closed his eyes. The fear felt heavy again. Almost as heavy as the fear he felt after his failed interview. But then, something inside him whispered, "Look how far you've come." He opened his eyes slowly. And he realized something powerful. This stress, this pressure, this difficulty, these were signs of growth, not signs of failure. That night, Leo wrote in his notebook again. "I am learning to be strong in new ways. I am learning to trust myself. I am learning to keep going even when I'm unsure." And after writing these sentences, he felt calm again. The next day, he walked into the office with quiet determination. He took his time. He breathed deeply. He spoke clearly. He stayed patient. And slowly, step by step, the difficult tasks became clearer. The problems became solvable. The confusion became understanding. At the end of the week, Clara visited his desk and said, "Great work, Leo. Your part of the project looks strong." Leo felt warmth spread across his chest. "Really? I was worried I wasn't doing enough." Clara smiled. "You're doing more than enough. And you're growing fast." After she walked away, Leo leaned back in his chair. He felt something beautiful, a deep sense of belonging. He belonged in this job. He belonged in this team. He belonged in this new life. And the most surprising part? He belonged because he had failed first. Because failure had taught him everything he needed to know. That evening, he walked through the city with a soft smile. The lights were bright, the streets busy, the air cool. And he whispered, "I'm proud of the person I'm becoming." He didn't mean perfect. He didn't mean strong all the time. He meant someone who keeps going. Someone who keeps learning. Someone who keeps growing. Someone who keeps rising after falling. Someone who understands that failure is part of the path. And as the night slowly covered the sky, Leo felt something deep and powerful settle inside him. He wasn't afraid of failure anymore. Because he finally understood that failure is not the opposite of growth. It is the beginning of it. Thank you for listening to Section 5 of Today English Podcast. When you're ready, join me in Section 6, the final section, where Leo faces a new emotional challenge that teaches him the deepest lesson of all, how growth continues even when life becomes difficult again. But every journey has a final lesson, one that tests everything we have learned so far. In this last chapter, Leo discovers that even after success, even after progress, life still brings new challenges. And sometimes the greatest growth comes not from victory, but from learning to stay calm, stay open, and stay present during the hardest moments. Several months passed after Leo started his new job. He had become more confident, more stable, more comfortable in his role. His coworkers liked him. His manager trusted him. He completed tasks with more ease, more clarity, more rhythm. He learned how to communicate better, how to breathe through stress, how to stay patient with himself. He had settled into his new life with a warm sense of belonging. But one quiet morning, everything changed. Leo received a message from his mother asking if he could visit her. Her tone seemed different, softer, more serious. When he reached her small apartment, she greeted him with a smile, but her eyes looked tired. She invited him to sit, and after a long silence, she said, "I had a doctor's appointment yesterday." Leo felt something tighten inside him. "Is everything okay?" he asked. She looked down at her hands. "They found something. I need more tests." The room grew silent. The world seemed to slow down. Leo's breath caught in his throat. What? What do you mean?" She tried to stay calm. "They're not sure yet. It might be nothing. It might be something. I don't know." Leo felt fear rising inside him like a cold wave. His heart began to beat faster. His hands shook slightly. The air felt heavy. He wanted to say something comforting, something wise, something strong. But all he could say was, "I'm here." And his mother smiled softly. "I know." They talked for a while longer, but the whole time, Leo felt the old fear returning, the fear he thought he had solved, the fear he thought he had defeated, the fear that had lived inside him after his first failed interview. But this fear was different. Bigger. Deeper. More personal. That night, Leo walked home under a silent sky. He could hear his own footsteps echoing on the ground. He felt a heaviness inside his chest that he didn't know how to carry. When he reached his apartment, he didn't turn on the lights. He sat on the floor, leaned against the wall, and let himself breathe slowly. "I don't know how to handle this," he whispered to himself. For the first time in months, he felt small again. Lost again. Vulnerable again. But then he remembered something. Every time his life had grown, it began with a moment of fear. Growth always followed fear. Pain always carried a lesson. The old man's voice echoed in his mind. Failure is not the end. It is the beginning of something new. But this wasn't failure. This was something even more fragile. Something human. Something deep. Over the next weeks, Leo supported his mother. He joined her for appointments. He brought her groceries. He visited after work. He listened to her worries, held her hand when she was scared, and tried to stay strong, even when he felt like breaking. At work, his manager noticed he was quiet. One day, Clara approached him gently. "Are you okay, Leo?" He hesitated at first. Then he nodded softly. "My mom, she's not well." Clara's expression softened with understanding. "Take the time you need. Family comes first." Those simple words lifted a weight off Leo's shoulders. But even with support around him, worry sat inside him like a stone. Some nights, he couldn't sleep. Some days, he had trouble focusing at work. Some moments, he felt like the old fear was winning. And yet, he kept going. Slowly. Quietly. Step by step. One evening, after leaving his mother's place, Leo walked through the park where everything had begun, the park where he met the old man who changed his life. He sat on the same bench and looked at the pond. The water moved gently in the wind, reflecting the sky in soft colors. Leo closed his eyes and whispered, "I wish you were here." He meant the old man. He meant someone wise. He meant anyone who could give him a little strength. After sitting quietly for a long time, he heard footsteps approaching. Someone sat on the bench beside him. When he opened his eyes, it was not the old man. It was a young woman with a calm face and kind eyes. She looked at him and said gently, "You look like you're carrying something heavy." Leo felt surprised. I, I guess I am. Would you like to talk about it? She asked in a soft voice. At first, Leo hesitated. He didn't know her. He didn't want to burden a stranger. But then he remembered something important. He had grown because of people who appeared at the right moment. So he told her. Not everything. Not the details. Just the truth. My mom is sick, he said quietly. The woman nodded slowly. That's very hard, she said. You must be scared. Leo felt his eyes fill with tears. He nodded. I thought I was stronger now. I thought I learned how to handle fear. The woman smiled gently. Strength doesn't mean you don't feel fear. Strength means you keep going even when you feel fear. Leo breathed in those words deeply. They felt familiar. They felt like something the old man would say. Fear is not your enemy, she continued. It means you love. It means something matters. Leo wiped a tear from his cheek. I'm trying my best. I can see that, she said. They sat quietly for a while. Birds flew above the pond, and the wind moved through the trees with a soft, steady rhythm. The woman stood up to leave, but looked back at him and said, Whatever happens, you will grow through this too. Then she walked away. Leo watched her go, feeling a strange sense of comfort. As if the world had sent him another message at the right moment. Over the next weeks, Leo continued supporting his mother. She had more tests. More appointments. More waiting. Waiting was the hardest part. Waiting in hospital rooms. Waiting for results. Waiting for answers. Waiting in silence. Sometimes Leo felt like he would break under the pressure. But every time he felt overwhelmed, he remembered to breathe. He remembered to slow down. He remembered to stay present. One afternoon, after a long appointment, his mother said softly, You've become strong, Leo. He looked at her in surprise. Me? She nodded. Yes. You stay calm. You help. You listen. I don't know how I would manage all this without you. Leo felt emotion rise inside him. I'm scared, he admitted. She squeezed his hand. I know. But you're still here. That's strength. Her words touched him deeply. It made him realize something important. Strength is not about being fearless. Strength is about staying open while feeling fear. Staying kind while feeling tired. Staying hopeful while feeling uncertain. Finally, after weeks of appointments, the doctor gave them the results. The news was mixed. There was a problem, but it was treatable. There would be challenges, but there was hope. Leo felt his whole body relax. He didn't cry. He didn't collapse. He simply breathed out, long and slow, like releasing a storm that had been inside him for weeks. That night, he returned to the park and sat on the same quiet bench. He closed his eyes and whispered, Thank you. Not because everything was perfect. Not because the struggle was over. But because he had survived the worry, stayed present for his mother, and discovered a deeper strength inside himself. As the sun slowly set, painting the sky in soft orange light, Leo realized something powerful. Life would always bring new challenges. Some small, some big, some painful, some beautiful. But every challenge carried a message. And the message was always the same. You can grow through this. He opened his notebook and wrote his final lesson. Growth never ends. It moves with life. It moves with fear. It moves with love. And as he wrote those words, he understood something he had never understood before. Failure was not the reason he grew. Fear was not the reason he grew. Success was not the reason he grew. He grew because he kept going even when he didn't have the answers. He grew because he stayed open even when he was hurting. He grew because he learned to breathe, to listen, to trust, and to keep moving forward. He grew because he learned to meet every challenge, not with perfection, but with presence. When he stood up from the bench, he felt calm, strong, connected to something bigger than himself. He walked home under the evening sky, and every step felt steady. Every breath felt peaceful. Every moment felt alive. That night, before going to bed, Leo whispered to himself, "I am not afraid of growing anymore." And that simple sentence became the final lesson of his journey. Thank you for listening to this full story on Today English podcast. I hope Leo's journey helped you practice listening, helped you follow English slowly and naturally, and helped you feel the gentle truth behind this story. Failure is not the opposite of growth. Fear is not the enemy of growth. Growth is a quiet process inside the human heart, one that continues through success, through fear, through joy, through pain, and through every moment of life. Thank you for being here. Thank you for learning. Thank you for listening. See you in the next episode.